So today is the beginning of a 12 weeks. Every Wednesday at 10 o'clock, I will be here speaking on a metaphysical topic. I'm actually looking quite forward to this because I have very different views than often what is majority holds externally in the world. I am going to be speaking about the chakras today and how I discovered what I call the expanded chakra system. And it's the chakra system I use in my transformation work, in my psychic development classes, and everything else. Now, I'm going to tell you the story, then we'll talk about some of the ins and outs of what occurred and what happened. Years ago, it's a lot of years ago, in the early mid-80s, I took a weekend, a 9-month course, 1 weekend a month for 9 months with a lady by the name of Ellie Rizal, who created the, something engineering around belief systems. Anyway, it was around belief systems. It was around how we worked. And I actually was studied with her for some time, and I learned quite a lot. One of the weekends we had there was about chakras. I probably at the time in the mid-80s didn't have a lot of knowledge about chakras, but it was on the agenda, so off we went. My girlfriend who was down staying with me and we went to go and take this 3-day weekend course. Now, during the chakras, one of the things that came out very, very clearly was that we were led to go into the chakra. And in going into the chakra, one of the first things we discovered is that the traditional colors that they talked about were not there. They were different colors. So we kind of put colors to the one side. The second thing was that we worked with the original 7, but we also worked with a couple of other ones above the head and below the body. That had become a little more aware through the book Joy's Way. And actually, I had been, interestingly enough, doing a past life regression workshop across the hall from him one time when he was doing one of his chakra workshops. So we went along with the whole weekend, finding out all sorts of different things about our chakras. Now, the interesting thing for me is each one of these weekends that I did, I would go home and I would work with myself through that weekend, whether it was our inner selves, our male-female stuff, our whatever. I would spend the whole month up to the next course looking at inside of me. So I began to go into my chakras and recognize that there was energy coming up, and I would go in and I would come up, and I remember coming up from my solar plexus towards my heart, and I found and saw this little black dot, like an energy dot. And I went, what's that doing there? So curiosity, which was probably what's got me into a lot of information over the years, I began to explore what this dot is. And what I began to find was there was another energy center there. Now, at the same time, a friend of mine was studying with another teacher. And I said, well, you know, I'm running into this other energy here. And I have no reference to that. What are you finding? What are you getting? Well, her teacher was saying, yeah, there is another energy center, but it's outside the body. Well, I wasn't finding that. I was finding it was inside my body. So but anyway, we had sort of collaboration. So there is another energy center. Now, over the next few years, I did a lot of work of this whole system and a couple of things I found out. But before I get into that, I'm going to show you a couple of things I just thought, rather than just looking at me talking, I wanted to show a few things. So I'm going to pull this up and I'm hoping it'll come through. It's the traditional, I think you can see that if I do it correctly, the traditional kind of original 7 chakras and the colors that have always been prescribed to them. The root chakra red, the sacral orange, the solar plexus yellow, the heart green, the throat blue, the third eye is an indigo, and the crown is a purpley or violet, depending on who you're reading or studying with. Now, a couple of other stories. As I began to put this system together, that there was more. I began to discover between each base of each of the original 7 chakras, there was these other energy centers there. And so I came up with beginning to recognize that if we start from below our feet is the earth star, and there are chakras that go down further below that. Then we have the base, and then we have the pubic, what I call the pubic bone. I began to just name them because when I first ran into chakra, people called them by numbers. Well, I let that go very fast because I was running into all these other interesting places right on the pubic bone. Then, of course, we had the navel, and then there was the waist, right on the waistline, the solar plexus, the sternum. Sternum became a very important one. That was the first one I ran into, actually. The heart, the mid-chest, the throat, the upper lip, the brow, crown, and then the soul star. Now, I want to pose this to you, and before I go on a little bit further. Thousands of years ago, it was discovered, and I believe in India, Tibet, in that area, of these chakra systems with the colors. For these thousands of years, it has been handed down, one after the other, generation after generation. We have 7 chakras. These are the colors, and they sit in the front of your body. Does it not make sense with how the earth is going through changes that we ourselves are going through changes? That our chakra system has grown and emerged and into a whole different way. Now, I began to work with, and I realized very quickly that the chakra system wasn't just this energy center that's in the front, that actually the energy ran all through the body and that was in the back. And to this day, in fact, it happened the other day with a client. I was going back to clear some energy, and I went, oh, there's an issue here between your backbone and out further. And we're working on an energy center. And the person agreed with me. She said, yeah, I'm always having problems back there. And this is just one of many that I get, where we have to clear out the etheric block in order for the physical body to feel a lot better and to get this chakra system. And then I began to realize that what we needed to do with each chakra that I was working with was that there was a really big grid. And I want to show you another picture, a couple of pictures that I've dug out. One is, hang on, I'll see if I can do it this way, make sure that you can see a little easier. One is this one. And I hope that's coming up. I'm going to look around to see if it's coming through. That is a universal of the man's energy all around, correct? We see that a lot. Man's, here we are, this full energy center. Then we also have, and there's lots of pictures of these. I took these off looking for the magnetic fields. And again, we see a person that has a lot of energy fields around them. The earth has this. And I remember the first time watching the DVD Thrive. And if you haven't watched Thrive, please do so, because you'll find there's a lot of great information in there. And it talks about how the earth has an energy field around us and how we have an energy field around us. And this made my heart feel really good because I'd already found what I call the grid that the chakra system connects into. And so here I am watching this video that is out all over the place at that time. You might say in the ones that are kind of not following mainstream. And it was saying what I saw, what I was coming into. Then, as I was going along, I came across a Reiki book. Unfortunately, I lost most of my library in a move, though I don't know where it disappeared to, but it did. So But I did. I opened this big Reiki book up, and there it talks about a secondary chakra system. So I have the original 7, then right behind it, they had this other system. And I went, of course, but it's moved into, with checking with, because our vibration is changing, we are needing more support. It has moved into the main chakra system. Now, I still wasn't hearing too much about how the energy moves through. That really, this grid, which is why I called my beginning intensive classes Plug Into Your Power, because it's all about plugging into this grid and getting these chakras all working together. And as they all work together, the flow from above. We know, for instance, we have a chakra up here above our head, the soul star. It goes on up and up. Another little story. Many of you may know I produced large psychic fairs for many years. And one of the psychics working in with me phoned me up, an older British trained clairvoyant, or medium. You can't get any better than British trained. And she phoned me up all distressed and was feeling like she was being, like there was energy being sent to her and she couldn't clear it and didn't know what it was. And she didn't know who else to turn to. And I just took one quick look at her, and I was on the phone with her. And at the time, I always remember, because at the time I lived right on the water and I was looking out at the ocean, and I'm on the phone and I said, well, have you checked the 3rd chakra above your head? And she said, what are you talking about? I said, oh, well, we have chakras that go on up. And she said, really? I said, yes. We have chakras all over the place. Energy lines that are amazing. So she said, well, just a minute, let me just check. Oh my goodness, she said, there's a chakra up there, and I can see the energy that's stuck. I went, great. Do you want me to clear it, or can you do it? No, I can do it. She said, I now know where I have to look. This shows, now that lady has passed on now because she was older when she made that call and I was younger. That it was like this knowledge was not known. I tried, and I mean that word literally, try to tell people on many things of what I was learning and discovering, because I was going into the energies, I was listening, I was also taught in my sleep at night, coming up with like ha-has. And I tried to say, there's a bigger chakra system, we have this grid around us. But every now and again, something would happen that would support it. I was on a flight back from Hawaii. Now, interestingly enough, I had decided to come back early. A lady on the flight recognized me, stopped when we got off the flight, where I flew into Seattle. Got off the flight. She had some time. I was going to drive back up to Vancouver area. She was flying off to Florida, I believe she was in. She had an hour and a half. So we sat down and we talked, and they were doing similar work down there. A little different, but similar. They were calling it the Matrix, which I think is probably more of a common term, maybe because of the movie, I don't know, where I just still call it the grid. And so we had a great talk, but also it was confirmation to me I was on the right track, that I wasn't just, sort of like creating something out of nothing, because I knew it wasn't. I knew that I had worked with all mine. Now, not all of these came in at the same time. The upper lip one, which is right here, was the last one I really discovered. And it actually supports the psychic mouth, the psychic nose, especially the psychic ears. And it is between your throat and your brow chakra, and it acts as a support system. And often when people come in, sometimes they have done work and the chakras have kind of found their way a little bit. But the upper lip one I found very often was just really not opened up yet. So the more I opened it up, it was like the thought form of its existence began to grow. And as it began to grow, then it becomes into a general thought form and it gets to be accepted. So over time, I began to discover more and more of how this system works. That we, in our, I'm going to say ignorance, because nobody knew, put a lot of parts on one chakra or the other. Some people come in to see me and their crown chakras are huge. Now, I've come to whole belief system that every chakra has its job to do. All these parts that we have within ourselves, those that study with me know I go on about this. Nothing is more important than anything else. It is a combination of everything. So to have a heart chakra really big is not the greatest to do as far as I'm concerned. Number one, very often people who have chakras, crown chakras that are very big, are not really cognizant of the chakra above the head, the soul star, which go on up and up and up. I mentioned the third above. By the way, if anybody is being psychically attacked, that tends to be where they are attacked from, or even outside in the sternum, which seems to have its own system as well. It can be the third one out, or it can be right at the very edges where the grid is. I've run into that quite a bit, other people's energy there. So it's like, where do other people put their energy? I didn't mean to get into the talk about attacks, but somehow or rather, the chakra system is often where it happens. If a person knows what they're doing. I deal a lot with the work I do also too, where people have sent jealous energy to another. In old times, they call these curses. And those thought forms that are sent, usually jealousy based, believe it or not, often happen in the schoolyard. More often than not, I run into these thought forms that are sent into the person's energy fields, and I'll go, oh, do you get pains in the back of your head? Do you get a pain here, a pain there? Well, yes, I do. I said, yeah, because I thought it's like an arrow that's been sent in through the field. And jealousy has a very, very strong energy. And because it has a very strong energy, if you're weak, it happened to me personally, and this is my personal story about this. I know about this stuff. And I was doing a psychic fair, and by psychic fairs, by Friday night, you knew if they were going to be a success or not. And if they were not, that meant you owed money, at least from my perspective. This one year, I had reamed out a certain, and I had been a little, I was usually pretty easygoing, but I got really fed up with this one person, and I kind of was not very nice when we were in the city of Victoria. So we come to Vancouver. Now, unfortunately, we already kind of know if our advertising campaign is going to work or not. So, and if I remember rightly, it was also raining. It was in the fall. It was towards the end of September, and very often it was raining. But we didn't do very well on that Friday night, and I would say I went emotionally down, meaning that I was like, oh. Now, I didn't know at that moment, but at that moment, this person who I had kind of reamed out a bit sent me a nasty thought form. So our next thing was that there was Thanksgiving weekend, our Thanksgiving weekend, and we were going, I remember I was driving up to Edmonton with a friend to visit before we went to Calgary for our next big show, and I was feeling sick. I was feeling really, really sick. So for years I studied with a church that, because one of the reasons, because I love their prayer method, and I went, I got to figure out what this is about. Now, how often we make a mistake in what we ask for. I went in, and instead of asking to be healed by whatever was bugging me, I asked to find out what was going on. And and because I can tune in when people are praying, I got the answer. I found out what had happened. But unfortunately, I didn't ask to be healed. I just asked to find out. So you got to know what you're asking for. And your energies are interacting with people all the time. And if your chakra system's strong, nothing can get in. This is what I work to explain to people. You need to be strong within yourself. And usually that's having your chakra system strong, because if you look at my grid system, it stands beyond you. So that's your power. It doesn't mean you have to be way out. It just means you have to be strong in that. And I wasn't at that moment. So I end up in Calgary having another show to do, still not well. So interestingly enough, to complete that story, when I got back to Vancouver, I found a friend of mine who, it's a bit of a cultural thing that had gone on, that knew the culture. And we did a ritual, which I don't normally have to do or even do, and I got well. But that's how effective a thought form can be when someone who knows what they're doing, and the angle that they came in on me physically was not a straight angle. It was finding the hole that it needed to get in. So I don't know why I've kind of sidetracked on this, but somebody must need to hear it, because that's what usually happens. So what it came to me then was to get back and to really figure out how does all this work. And what I was going to do was read out a little bit. Where's my other sheet gone? Don't tell me I threw the wrong one away. That could happen. Yeah. I wanted to just talk about what specifically they do. So the Earth star, which is approximately 6 feet to 12, not 6 feet, sorry, 6 inches to 12 inches below your feet. You can actually feel it, and I've done this in many places. I've had people just take their hand, stand it down, bring their leg up, and run their hand. The key is with energy, whether you're healing, whether you're working like I do, transforming energy, you've got to work slow. Otherwise, you miss it. Like I'm going to run my hand up here. If I run fast like that, I'm going to miss it. But if I come slowly in, I'm going to feel it. I can feel it. And you can feel it. The same thing is above your head, and we'll get there. You can feel that earth chakra, that earth star. Then you have your base chakra. This is what traditionally has been red. Now, this is one of the things that I don't put in colors, because when you go in, you may find it's brown. Or you might find it's green, because it does relate to the earth, and those are earth colors. Maybe not, just saying, but because we're given this whole thing, oh, the base is red. It's like, but mine's, and people who do my courses, they go in and I just say, note the color, but just note the color. That's your color. It doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It's just the way it is. Now, the pubic bone one I find interesting. It really superimposes, and the energy comes through the pubic bone. And I find that every time I move into that, it brings joy. When you're feeling depressed, when you're feeling really sad and whatever, you need to make sure your pubic bone energy is coming in to bring that joy into the system. Our physical bodies are designed to be happy. Unfortunately, in our society, we're not often as happy as we need to be. Now, the navel chakra, well, it's for females in particular. This I find is really, really an important chakra. And it's the one very often it's with our digestive system, and for women, it's with the uterus. It's with our psychic, plus our emotional, plus our sexual center for women. And a lot of women's navel chakras are totally messed up. And not always. It's not like everyone. It's just some are. The traditional color is orange, but it's the creative, it's the emotional. I always say the emotional, the psychic, and healing elements all come from there, because that's where we are. But it's so creative. When we have it aligned, it's where our creativeness, and when there's other elements that bring in our sensuality. And so that's really, I should mention the base root chakra is really where men's sexuality sits. So a lot of that, they don't always seem to say that. I meant to say that, apologize. Waistline chakra, basically, of course, why it's called the waist, it superimposes the waist. And what I liked about it when I first found it is because it connected with the grid. That was its job, to connect with the grid and make sure we're in our bodies. I was a person that was not in my body very often. I was very mental. I was intuitive, yes, but in living my life, I wasn't in my body. There's a lot of reasons for that. Childhood trauma, lots of falls, which I still pay the price of today, physically, because I hurt myself physically. And so that the waistline has that sense. And I've got here written down too, also important in abundance and prosperity. If you're in your body, we're working with a physical world, and you need to be able to be in your physical world. The head doesn't always do it. You're going to bring it down and to make it work. Solar plexus. Oh man. Some people come in and their solar plexus are so raw. And it also deals with all that right in with your stomach, the nervous system there, the liver, It's an emotional chakra in so many ways. This is where your gut feelings are often felt because of the stomach element, but it's a power center. And its traditional color is yellow, which tends to be a mental color. Yellow is considered more of a mental color. It's always been my favorite color since I was a kid, but there's some, now I've got more collective, that every color has its wonderfulness about it. But I think I relate the yellow to the light, to the gold element. Now, the sternum, as I said, is right on that sternum, right where the rib cage kind of separates. First one I ever found. And the first one that I really began to stretch out, although I did mostly with the heart, and which we will do a little exercise on that in a minute. It superimposes the solar plexus area. Oh no, the sternum. Sorry, it represents the connection between physical and etheric. It also connects into other chakras leading out from the physical in the front and the back. And that's what, again, I started saying about that. What I discovered, the energy goes right through us and connects into the grid. Actually, it connects into the grid 360. But in our two-dimensional, moving into three-dimensional worlds, most of us don't see in 3D, is that we start connecting to the front, then we move it through to connect to the back. And then what I do in my work is have that knowing that it's going all around and then coming up and down. So that whole thing. Now the solar plexus, what I found is I'm checking, is that very often, because it seems to have its own little system in it, this is where often you will carry other people's stuff, other things that have been sent to you. And I'm a great believer. It's not whether a person sends you positive or negative. I don't usually judge them. It's just other people's energies is a no-no. You need to be your energy. So your chakra system needs to be dealing with earth, with above, and allowing inside just to be able to be in all the ways. So now we've dealt everything that's below the heart, which is considered the middle. Oh, I just love the heart chakra. I get teary. I can't believe it. I'm getting teary-eyed here. It connects into an energy, because each one of these is energy that comes into the system, but it connects into a universal love energy. It's where it is absolutely loving. And what I love about it is as we bring that energy in and it comes into the physical, it comes into the physical heart, which means it comes into the blood, and the blood goes to every part of our body. And what I love about it is that it means everybody has access to this universal love. It's not just, oh, I have to go way out there somewhere. It means it's right inside. And the heart chakra does this. It really brings a connection that it was, because each one of these chakras, whatever energy they bring into, also sends the energy up, and it also receives it from below. So you've got this mixture that is going on above and below all the time. The throat, the mid-chest chakra, very important because it represents your self-love. There has been so much concentration on the heart chakra over the centuries that people forgotten that up here. And a lot of people began to define this one, actually. What I found when I was looking to see what else was going on was that they began to find there was something here, and they said, oh, it's just the thymus. But no, there's a whole chakra system in there that brings in self-love. Can you imagine that beautiful self-lovingness that is coming in? And as it comes on in, it is going also through everything. So your image, your belief, your structure of yourself improves. Then we come to the throat. I find the throat often has a lot of difficulty. It superimposes the thyroid, and it really extends around, has often a lot of stuff in it because we come through childhood where we are not able to speak our truth, where we're not listened to, or we're afraid of speaking out our truth. So where does that energy get held? well, there's other places we can put it, but very often, I know when I started clearing out this area in my body, I would find these little black, like little black grapes or black ball bearings or something. And I began to be able to clear that out. And slowly and surely it became easier and easier to speak my truth. And so we really want that all nice and clear for the throat to have. Plus, as a speaker, I wanted to make sure I had lots of energy in that area. I have a fairly loud voice, and one of the things I used to say was, I didn't know they were going to invent microphones. I wanted to make sure I was heard. And now I'm having to figure out how to get myself heard through the internet. So, what do we say? Last one, upper lip. It was the last one I discovered, and it made sense. And I actually went looking for it because everywhere else I found the in-between ones. So where was this one? It didn't make sense there wouldn't be one. So I went looking, and there it was. And it just, to me, I'm not 100% sure yet exactly, except I know it supports the psychic systems, and I know it supports the throat, and it supports the brow. So that's as much as I have on that one so far. And that the thought form about it being there is growing. The brow chakra, of course, we all know, has two roles. It has a brow chakra, meaning it is our psychic eye, but it also brings in clarity and in connections with a crown and everything else. In the psychic development course that I teach, and we're just looking at the psychic development part of my work, the brow chakra plays an important part. What we find often in the brow chakra, in my transformational work and in the classes, is that it's often chock-a-block full of past life stuff. Past life memories. It's like galleries are held in there. And in fact, I was just saying to a client the other day, we don't have to hold on to this stuff because our microchips that we know exist now are just taking all this information that's in our brains anyway. So we don't forget anything. It's there. We might have to figure out where it's there, but it's there. So you don't have to hang on to this stuff. And it's amazing how often, even on a different level, we have made decisions to always remember. You must remember this. It's in the Akashic records, actually. I find it a lot. People write that, I must remember, I have to remember, I must always remember. And of course, we got to clear all that out. But anyway, so this is what happens a lot in the brow chakra, this whole thing about holding on, holding on, holding on. There's another part of that brow chakra, which is bringing in clarity and information. And where does it go? Excuse me. Inside what I call is the command center, which is when you go straight up, and it's right where the pituitary and the pineal gland sit. An etheric gland is what I call the command center, where we have our inner eye, our inner ear, our inner nose. What else am I missing? Eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, right? Our psychic senses are in there. The inner has to know, is it a clairvoyant thing? Is it a dream? Is it imagination? This is our inner eye. These parts that work in the middle of our head for us are so incredibly worked. And if they don't get the energy from the brow and that energy coming up through the whole body and down from above, from the crown, they're like working like on nothing. They're overworked. And people sometimes who get a little scrambled inside their heads, very often it's like they're a sponge that's needing water. And what are they needing? Water is the energy from the chakra system. The inner eye, the inner ear, the inner nose work together. And when the chakra centers send up information that is gathered through the aura, etc., this is where your intuition kicks in. This is how your intuition can be there, because it's getting the information. And what I found that very often those inner systems there is that no one's paid any attention to them. They don't know they're there. They don't know they can go there. They don't know that they exist, and they feel overworked and underappreciated. And of course, if you have any part of your life where you feel that, that's going to be referenced in there too. So the crown we talked about briefly, it sits above the top, it sits right on the top of your head. We don't want it too big. We want it in natural size with all the others. But then we have the soul star above. Now, I'm going to probably step on a few people's toes with this one. I get a number of people who come to see me, and they're very involved with extraterrestrials, whether they just like reading about them or hearing about them. Some of them have had journeys, some of them had been taken on ships, starships and stuff. And I don't have the right kind of blood in this life, so I've been fortunate. They've overlooked me for sure. Now, but what I find is they leave behind a metal connection, and often they'll use the soul star to sort of latch onto. Now, we do know they put probes in other parts of the bodies. I'm not going to get into that, but I have dissolved a few of those in my life. But I find often the soul star in particular is this element of metal. And I always stop before I do anything and say, are you interested in, ET stuff, extraterrestrial? I always get an answer of yes. I've never had a no yet. Now, it's not everybody that has this. But what I do is I dissolve all of that, all those little bits and pieces. Sometimes there's a lot. Sometimes there's just a few. Sometimes there's other attachments. Now, the odd time in my transformational work, I'll say, other, what I call other, always have other written down. And some of those others I don't know. And sometimes I've been instructed what they are. And sometimes it is higher up on the chakra chain, because I'll go up higher. Thought forms can be placed there and other things. But basically, that soul star is important. And so what happens often with the soul star is the crown chakra actually closes, because it knows there's energy coming in that it doesn't like very much or isn't sure about it, and it will tighten up to try and protect what's going on down. So it's really important to have that soul star pulling the energy down from way above all the way through, and at the same time as the energy comes up from the earth, can move. It's like it goes both ways. It goes on up as well. So I find that the soul star's health, you might say, is really, really important. So there is not one chakra that is more important than the other. They're all important. They all have a part to play. They all have an awareness. And like I say, most of this information I have not, people say, have you written this up? No, I haven't written it up. It's just in my course when we're doing psychic development. It is one of the things we have spent a whole day on, the chakras. We also open up the eyes, we open up the ears, we open up the other ones, the nose and the mouth, which are not used that much. But some people, I have a story to tell. I might as well tell this story because it came to my mind. I have a cousin, second cousin actually, same age as me though, who worked in the banking system in New Zealand. And I have told the story somewhere before because I just love it. And when I go down, I usually visit her and with her. And she worked in the banking, and she was getting brilliant at discovering fraud. So the banking people gave her the job of training others to be able to find these fraudulent things out. And so anyway, I am down there, excuse me just a sec. And she was saying how she was having trouble teaching this. And I said, well, how do you find out? How do you know that someone's being fraudulent? And she said, I smell it. I said, oh, you have a strong psychic nose. Most people do not have a strong psychic nose. So you've got to find the people you're training what they're strong in. Does it feel right or wrong? Do you hear? Is the tone off? So is it their hearing? Does it taste funny? You find that, they'll be able to figure out their way of being able to find that. And that's all part of their psychic system that comes from also having this chakra system working effectively. So your system gets the messages. Now, the key, of course, is do you listen? Just a sec. I'm going to come to what you have to say. I have someone wanting a question. So can you unmute yourself and ask me the question? That'd be great.
Yeah, I have two questions that came up. Can you hear me? Yeah. You didn't mention this, but I had a feeling it might be connected. Because I've had the experience of I don't know, what I would say the chakras opening or something. I get, not so much now, but I used to get really strong palpitations on the back of my skull. There's a little bump there that's, is that part of the throat chakra or part of another chakra of its own? Because it was...
Okay, I would say that if you're having a difficulty there, it's probably another energy that's blocked. It could be part of the chakra system, but often what we find when we go in there is that there is another energy, you picked up some other energy at some time or someplace.
Okay, because this went on for quite a long time. It was just like as if somebody was tapping on the back of my head. Yeah,
right. Yeah, that's why I would think it was another energy, more than likely, because it's connected more with, if it's right at the back there, it's connected more with the upper lip chakra. It's a little high for the throat. It's a little low for the brow. I mean, they're kind of that's why but the sound of it seems like that you've picked up. And quite often, I'll be honest, I get clients that phone me up to rebalance their energies, people who know the work I do, because they've been to a workshop, and sometimes they'll pick up energy that's being left from either the instructor and or some other place in relation to it, so that that's how they do. So that's one of the things, and sometimes in time it will dissipate, but often I know, like I have several people who just find, oh, I need rebalancing, and sure enough, they'll find some other person's energy in there, or something's being pushed around that doesn't flow. I'm always looking for flow. The chakra system is designed to flow.
Yeah. The other question that came up, you just sort of alluded to it, was you didn't have the right blood. Are you making the reference to the O negative blood with the ET? Or not?
I'm not specifically sure. I just know when I went looking as to, because a lot of my friends had been taken and had memories, and I was wondering why I hadn't, so I went exploring. I have in other lifetimes, but not this one. I do have one memory where our household was explored. I have B-type blood. I don't know, maybe other people. I just don't think, I had a feeling it wasn't the right blood they were looking for at that time. That's basically what I wanted to say. I had put out to the group what topics they would like to hear about. And one person that they wanted to hear about soul retrievals. Soul retrievals, which is what I'm going to speak on next Wednesday. And I'm gonna have to put a big but here. But that is usually done with the indigenous peoples. I'm not that, but I do know a lot about how we freeze in space and time. So I'm going to talk more about that. So I trust that you will enjoy and have enjoyed the information that I've shared here. Know that you do have this big grid. I actually tried, I'm laughing because I tried to draw it. I am not an artist, even though I do soul impression drawings and aura drawings, which are quick drawings, believe me. But I wanted to get an idea, and what I took was the original in black and white to try and show that from the original, what they've done is really, we've got this, and we're inside the circle. We're inside this grid that people keep seeing and showing off in a different way. And to know that we have this beautiful reservoir of energy to support us. And when we have things not working right in our bodies, very often that chakra close by is not necessarily working correctly. So I really want to thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Thank you.